Class is in session. Welcome to District 25's Get to Know You podcast. Take your seats and listen as Communications Coordinator Adam Harris opens District 25 doors to you, Arlington Heights. Here we go.
Yes, another edition of the Get to Know You podcast. I'm your host of these podcasts, Adam Harris. I'm the Communications Coordinator for District 25. Today I'm at Greenbrier Elementary School. I'm with Principal Donna Bingaman, and I'm very excited to bring her personal life and her reasons for being a principal to you out there in Arlington Heights. Just to recap really quickly, wanted to let you know what this podcast is about. It's exactly what the title is. It's to get to know the people running the school district here in District 25, and then also possibly beyond that. And so, Donna, thank you very much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. So, I met you 3 years ago when I started here, and I love coming up to Greenbrier every single time that I do because it feels like it's on its own island, but in a very, very good way. Can you start by describing to the Arlington Heights community what this Greenbrier community is about?
We're a very tight-knit community.
Yeah.
Our borders are kind of small, and we're just all encompassed by these big roads: Arlington Heights Road, Rand Road, Palatine Road, and 53. So we're really self-contained. And it's just such a community feel in terms of staff, students, and parents just working together to make life the best that it can be for the kids in this community. It's just a very wonderful place to be.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like even when I ride my bike up here and I lock it up, I notice that people are like aware of who I am and just making sure like hey, welcome to the Greenbrier community. Also want to make sure that you're a safe person in our community. Like,
absolutely.
Everyone seems to know who everyone is.
And they look out for each other.
Yes.
So it may not be your kid riding their bike down the street, but you're keeping an eye on that kiddo anyways. It's just what this community is.
So when did you become principal of Greenbrier?
This is my 4th year.
And what do you think was your first thing that you wanted to learn about this Greenbrier community? Like, what was the first thing that you were like, oh, this is what I'm going to definitely wrap my arms around?
The people.
Yeah.
For me, it was all about learning who was here and who they were and what they were all about. With any community, you have an outside view of that community that isn't always the same as the inside view. And so, I was very excited to come to Greenbrier because I knew great things about Greenbrier, but you don't really understand the depth of those great things until you're in it.
Yeah.
So really, getting to know the kids and having the early childhood program here. And so I've got not only Greenbrier parents, but I also have parents that are spread out throughout the community because of that early childhood program. But they all come together. It's just such a nice place.
You're listening to the Get to Know You podcast. I'm your host, Adam Harris. If you want to get a hold of us at District 25 or our communications department, at AHSD25 on Twitter, Facebook.com/AHSD25. I'm the one that replies and reads all of those tweets, so I promise you will get a response. If there's someone in the community and in the District 25 community that you think deserves to be highlighted on a podcast or a video, let me know, and I'll go highlight them because there's plenty of people out there. Donna, can you walk us through your career path and what led you here?
Sure. When I first graduated college, my husband was still finishing school, so we were down in Normal, Illinois, and so I worked in a preschool and was a preschool assistant director for a couple of years when we were down there. We moved up to Arlington Heights when he graduated, and so he's a science teacher at South, and that's why we moved up here, and we have family in the area. And so I started in the district as a literacy teaching assistant. At the time, that was a teaching assistant that went to different buildings and worked with students on their literacy skills. It was before we had literacy teachers in the building. And so I was sometimes in 5 buildings in one day. It was a great experience, but I was looking for something else. And so then I substituted for a while. And then I took a medical leave for a 6th grade language arts teacher at Thomas. And then that was where I stayed for like the next 16 years or so.
Oh my goodness.
But I started at Thomas as a 6th grade language arts teacher. I did that, and I'm going to have my years wrong, but like 8 years or so for that. And then I taught 6th grade math, because math was always my passion as a student. But I think I became a better math teacher by being an LA teacher first.
Interesting. Why?
Because writing is not my thing.
Yeah.
It's something that I am not as confident in.
Yeah.
And so understanding the struggle that my students were having in a subject that I struggled with made me better able to handle the students that struggled with math.
Like developing an even deeper sense of compassion
Yes.
than you already had. Because all teachers, I feel like, have compassion just going into the teaching field. So that's fascinating. And before we go on with with your career path, can you give the residents' perspective and the parents' perspective as far as you said your strength wasn't necessarily literacy and writing, yet you were able to teach it very successfully. How does a teacher go about doing that?
So they work with others.
Right.
They collaborate a lot, and they do a lot of research, and they talk with their kids.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, okay, do this. Try this try this, get feedback from students. I got a lot of feedback from students. I got a lot of feedback from colleagues. And you have a team that supports you. And so we would meet as a language arts department, and it would be like, okay, I'm going to do this. And like, yeah, that's good. Or, you would go and ask, I'm having difficulty getting them to understand this. And then you would just get help from everybody.
That's great. And it's a lot of listening. I'm sure it also empowers the kids when you're asking their feedback. And
Absolutely.
You're asking, that's awesome. So, and that's a common theme I've heard here in District 25 is like this collaboration. I'm sure that's why people want to stay here as much as they do, and which you did. So then what happened after you taught math at Thomas?
After I taught math, I went in and taught. I was the computer lab teacher at
Right.
Thomas. That was not my original intent. Both of our computer teachers were retiring in the same year.
Wow.
And I was very concerned because that was it was the hub of the building at the time. And so I went to my principal, Tom O'Rourke, and said, I'm really nervous. You got to find really good people. And he and my assistant, you know what's coming. And then my assistant principal, Jim Wool, looked at me and said, how about you?
You're a really good person.
Yes. Yeah. So they sent me back to think about it for a while. And I did. And I came back and I said, no, I'm getting used to math. I really feel like, and the math teacher, the other 6th grade math teacher was retiring. I said, no, I think this is where I need to be. And they said, no, we think you need to go think about it some more.
Right. Nudge, nudge.
Nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I did make the move, and it was a great move.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed my time in the lab and the learning of the technology and helping the teachers to embed the technology into their classrooms and just being that support person for them to go to. And in that position, Jim Wool left, and Jason Dietz arrived as our new assistant principal. And between him and Tom started encouraging me to take classes to get my master's in administration. If you had asked me 15 years ago if I would have ever done that, I would have told you were crazy.
That's like a common theme in these podcasts, but it is someone that's like, you pick someone out and they're like, no, you're the right person for this, and kind of nudging you to do that.
Yeah. And it's something that great leaders do.
I agree.
And I've had the experience of growing up with some really great leaders.
That's so cool. So you went and did that, right?
I went and did that. And then I graduated, and about a year later, there was an assistant principalship open at Thomas that I applied for and got.
Look at all that stuff locking into place.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in things are meant to be, and things happen for a reason.
Right.
I got a position teaching language arts because I needed to do that before I could teach math.
Right.
And I needed to move the path I was taking to get to the point where I am now that I love so much.
And you love principalship, and so then you went from assistant principal at Thomas over to Greenbrier.
Correct.
And why do you love being a principal so much? I'm assuming you do. It's what you've been doing for 4 years here.
It is, and I love it. It's about the people. It's about the kids. In the classroom, you get to see the connection with the kids and their learning on a day-to-day basis with the same group of kids. Mm-hmm. I get to see it on a global level. Yeah. And I get to see what one teacher is doing in one room and one teacher is doing in another room and saying, oh, this is fabulous. Have you seen Sue do this? Or have you seen Erica do that? And just that connection and being able to say, you should check this out, or, maybe you should try this. It's so much fun to watch so many kids just blossom and grow. And I get them, for some of them, from the time they're 3 to 11. That's huge. At middle school, it was 3 years and they were gone. But to have some of these kiddos that come into our EC program for 8 years, it's really fun to watch them grow and develop. And you get to see the progress that they make, not only academically, but social emotionally as well.
Yeah. And I know this is a podcast, so people can't see, but I hope you can hear and feel the amount of excitement coming from Donna right now, because this is truly something that she was absolutely meant to be. And I'm really glad that your bosses at Thomas saw that in you when they did. So, again, you're listening to the Get to Know You podcast. I'm Adam Harris. I'm with Principal Bingaman at Greenbrier Elementary School. And now okay, so what's your favorite part about being a principal? What is the most rewarding thing? And then what is probably the biggest hurdle or challenge or thing that you really have to put some extra time into and concentration into?
My favorite thing is getting in with the kids and experiencing the learning that they are learning. Yeah. To go into a kindergarten class and sit down on the carpet and do a turn and talk with a student. Those are the best times.
Right.
The thing that we always struggle with is fitting everything in and helping the teachers to fit all that they want to do into the time that we have. They want to do everything for these children.
And you want them to want to do everything
absolutely.
For these children.
Absolutely. But we have to fit it in. We have to manage. And how do we do that? So that we're giving them the best.
And so sometimes I'm assuming teachers will come in with an idea or something that they want to implement next year, and you have to look at it from a realistic lens after you get all excited for what they came into the room for.
Yeah.
And sometimes you probably got to say no.
Sometimes, but we try not to.
Right.
Because they don't usually come in with very bad ideas. They're usually great ideas, and it's just finding the time or the resources to help them do it. I mean, we've had our STEAM night here going for, I think this will be our 4th year of our STEAM night, and that was a teacher's idea, totally. Erica, Miss Palmieri up in 5th grade, she came to me and she said, I have an idea. And I was a little nervous about it. And she says, so can this be the first annual STEAM night? I said, no, we can have a STEAM night, but let's see how it goes before we make it an annual event.
Right. And now
it's an annual event because it was just so fabulous. So, cool. A lot of times it's just trusting in them a little bit too and letting them try.
What do you think you want the community to know about Greenbrier School itself, whether it is like a STEAM night or the readathon day that you guys do? I mean, you guys are always doing a lot of philanthropic things that I'm getting emails about to come cover. So I guess, what do you want the community to know about this school and what this school does for the community?
I guess I would say that we are community focused. We're doing what's, inside our walls, we're doing what's best for kids, but we're also teaching our kids to help outside of our little bubble here.
That always seems like a priority here. And that's why I love coming in, and sometimes I'll just pop in, and I know that if I walk down your hallways, I'll be able to see something in a classroom that is, everything's worth showing, but like something in a classroom that will inspire, So, okay, so let's move on to your family.
Sure.
Tell us about them.
I have a husband.
Great.
We'll be married 29 years come May.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I have a son and a daughter. My son is 28 and my daughter is 23.
Great.
James started we moved into District 25 as a family when my son was going into second grade.
Wow.
We lived in another community before then, but after having us both work in this community and see what this community has to offer versus the community we were living in, we moved.
Right.
So my son went to Ivy Hill for 1st through 5th grade. My daughter went for kindergarten and 1st grade. And then we moved to the south side. And James started at South.
Okay.
And Jesse went to Westgate and then South. And then they both headed over to Rolling Meadows High School.
So they went through while your husband was working at South, right?
James was at South for 2 years. His 6th and 7th grade year, Jay was there. But then to give James a little bit of space, and there was an opening at Thomas, Jay transferred over to Thomas.
Wow, man. So it was you and Jay, your husband, working at Thomas, right?
Correct.
And your kids were going through the south end.
Correct.
Cool. And was that ever is that ever a tough dynamic to manage when you do? Because I noticed you said you gave your kids some space, and not that like, I mean, you guys are, I'm sure you're great parents. It's more about like just giving the kid their own feel of their own school, kind of.
Yeah. And for some people, that's not a problem. They can have their kid in their own school. But with middle school, I think it's a little tougher, and depending on the kid. And James was a little sensitive.
Yeah, I mean that makes that makes sense. Donna, working in the same building as your husband over at Thomas, when you did for the few years that you did that ever get interesting for you?
Oh, absolutely. We really enjoyed working in the same building. We drove in together. We'd have lunch together when it worked for our schedules and stuff. We really enjoyed it. But there was one point in time when I was the computer lab teacher, and he's a science teacher. He was on the 2nd floor, and I was on the 1st floor, and he was right above me. And so he's, got a full science lab with sinks and all of that. So he was, and I can't remember what he was doing, but something to do with water or cleaning. And he turned on the water and then kind of walked away, and the sink got clogged up and it overflowed. And so I'm in the room below him, and the water starts dripping and then gushing. And so we're moving computers out of the way and calling him and saying, "What are you doing? You got to fix this."
And your first thought's like, I hope this isn't Jay.
No, I knew it was Jay.
You knew it was Jay.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, so we stopped it, got it all cleaned up, and not a big deal. But, it was something that I could give him a hard time about. And,
100%.
The staff gave him a hard time about. And we thought, okay, good. He's learned his lesson. And then it happened again.
He did it twice?
He did it twice. But then that was it. He learned his lesson after the second time and was really cautious about water running.
That's fine, because I know that he is a really fun science teacher in that he likes to try things too with kids.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, that's what a science teacher probably does. Like,
yes.
Oh my God. So like he loves to try this and that, and the old adage that you think of, like of things exploding in science rooms and things.
That's his favorite thing to do.
In a very safe way.
Absolutely.
Right, of course. All right. And Donna, what's your daughter's name?
Jessie.
Jessie, great. She's doing some interesting things with her life, right?
She is.
Tell us about them, please.
So Jessie, it kind of all started actually with District 25. She was given the opportunity to go on the Japan exchange trip. And so she went to Shatara and visited and she was always a language person, so she was already taking Spanish at the middle school, but just kind of fell in love with cultures and communities. And so came back from that, and then in high school, her senior year, threw on another language. So she started taking Chinese as well as Spanish.
Right.
And her life goal is really to be able to talk to any person in the world. So my guess is that she's not done adding languages, and will just continue to add languages. But she has kind of devoted her life to seeing how many stamps she can get in the passport. So every opportunity that she's had in her life to travel, she has.
Wow.
Whether it's a church mission trip to Mexico, or she was a Chinese and Spanish major at Carthage. And so they do J-term trips. And so she went to Guatemala and Nicaragua and China.
Wow.
And then studied abroad in China and Peru.
Okay.
All before she graduated. And
Yeah.
I probably forgot a country in there. And then when she graduated, just before she graduated, she applied for a Fulbright scholarship and received a Fulbright scholarship to teach English in Taiwan. And so she spent 11 months in Taiwan teaching English.
And you know what? Credit so much to Jessie for taking that initiative and not being scared. And I didn't know this about that story. I knew that she was jet setting, but I didn't know that like part of it was from the Shitara Japanese exchange trip and how that kind of opens kids' eyes. It is a very comfortable way to show them a very foreign place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the home visit is so important
Oh
in
my
that
gosh.
trip, to be able to stay in a home. And I was able to go with her because I was the assistant principal at Thomas at the time. To be able to stay in a home, it's just a whole different feel than staying in a hotel and visiting cultural sites. You really get to understand the culture.
Yeah. And I was able to do
You've
it.
been there, yeah.
And it opened my eyes, right? And it opened my eyes at 29 years old. So I can only imagine how much more open my eyes would be if I experienced it as a teenager. And so that's a really cool program that anyone out there that is listening that has an elementary student or even into 6th, 7th grade at South or Thomas, everyone has the option to sign up for that program.
Absolutely.
And I would highly recommend doing it. You travel to a town of about 5,000 people in Japan, in the mountains of Japan, near Nagano. It's at Shitara, and you stay with a family for 4 days. And also you visit Nagoya, you visit Kyoto. So you do visit the major cities as well in Japan, and it's life-changing. I would say it's life-changing.
Yeah. And her traveling has given us the opportunity to travel as well.
Have an excuse.
Yes, absolutely. So when she studied abroad in Peru, we went to Peru. When she was in Taiwan, we went to Taiwan. So now her and I are kind of in a little competition to see who has more stamps in the passport. I'm up by one at the moment, so we'll see how long that lasts.
Good luck. And the advantage you have is you have more money.
Yes. Kids are graduated. College is done being paid for. Yeah, it's a very nice time in our lives.
That's great. Is there anything else you want the community to know about you yourself or your community, your family, or anything?
Just as I was thinking about my family, I was thinking about my mom. My mom is a immigrant. She was born and raised in Scotland.
Really?
And we have a multicultural fair coming up. And so that's another piece of Greenbrier that I think is so important to share, is that we have so many cultures represented in this little school. We're the smallest school in the district, but so many different cultures represented and celebrated here. So later this month, we'll have a fair that we'll set up in the Commons, and kids will put up all sorts of displays, and everybody will come down and talk and learn about each other.
I attended it a couple years ago, and it was like shocking walking into the multicultural room, or the MP room, the Commons, because it was, I think it was like 27 different like cultures represented, all so proudly. Like, it's so personal to them.
Yes.
And the kids are so excited to be like, my mom cooks this at home, my dad speaks this language. Like, it was such a personal representation of each individual, and thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah.
That's great.
We actually, I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, I was going around and talking to families at the Multicultural Fair, and one of the parents, who was a newer family, said that they moved to Greenbrier because of the Multicultural Fair. That was something they had found on our website, and that was important to them, and that was one of the reasons they chose to move to this area.
That's really cool. All right. Well, Donna, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You gave us such great things to think about Greenbrier. And I learned a lot too.
Yeah.
So thanks for being as open as you were.
You're welcome. It was great to be here.
Thank you very much for listening. Arlington Heights, again, you can reach out to us via Twitter at AHSD25, Facebook.com/AHSD25. Visit our website, sd25.org. And if you throw a /Greenbrier, you'll visit Greenbrier's site and see all the awesome things that they're doing here. Thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it. We are finished with our administration, and we're going to move on to highlighting some different people via podcast. And stay tuned to our website and our social media accounts to see who that is in the next coming months. In the meantime, thank you very much, and have a great day, everyone.